Awake thou that sleepest. Arise from the dead.
Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow earth travelers. Along with Mr. Anderson and Honor Mama Jeannie, you're listening to your Last Call, 2 hours of Christian talk radio with a sting. Brought to you by the Natural Family Foundation. As goes the family, so goes the nation. Our call-in number, if you wish to participate, is 614-423-4220. Our show can be accessed on the mmunited.org website if you've happened upon us by chance. I'm your host, B.J. Edwards, and this is my world. I pledge allegiance to the families of the United States of America and to the republic for which they stand, one nation, forged by these families, under God, preserving liberty and justice for all. Just a little follow-up on America's 4th of July celebration. We're going to do that today. And our guest, Mr. Larry Richardson, will be along shortly. Larry, by the way, spent 2 tours in the Socialist Republic of Vietnam in the late 60s and early 70s. Is now once again on the front lines, this time taking a stab, and we'll explain that, S-T-A-B, at halting the current Muslim assail on America. Larry defended our country half a century ago, and now he's back again on the battlefield. Good morning to all. The Mayor of Realville is in session.
Trying to get my eyes open.
Yeah. Christian talk radio with a sting.
Ouch.
Mr. Anderson, how was your 4th?
Oh, it was nice.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Spend it with family?
It was a family event.
It's just horrible what we do with families in America. You know what I mean?
We hung out together. We played together. We prayed together. We ate together. We had good weather. And we blew some stuff up.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you gave that up in the 60s.
Oh, I wasn't a bomber. I was a guy that put flowers in the end of muskets. But
yeah, you were a lover. You were a lover.
Peacenik.
Just a reminder, the call-in number, host BJ, is 614-423-4220. And you can access the program, mmunited.org, and chat with us as well. YouTube, BJ Edwards. And please subscribe there if you would, if you enjoy what you're hearing.
On YouTube?
Yep.
And a call-in number?
614-423-4220. And if you just want to listen, 605-475-0017. Mr. Anderson, I was shocked when I read this story. And I double-checked it. And it's
hard
true
to find shocking stories.
Yeah, this is true. It was one of those that can never happen, especially in California.
Oh, well, that's where Disneyland started.
In the land of fruits and nuts, in particular, Los Angeles. And what I found is that California, via Los Angeles, has joined the total King James Version only movement. Shocking. It seems that the Los Angeles Lakers, delighted users of the authorized version of the scripture all around the world Sunday, when the sports team announced it would be joining the King James only movement in a 4-year, $154 million deal. This is excellent news, said Pastor Bob Heathrow of Majesty King James Church, 1611 in El Monte, California. He told reporters, "I've often said that the Lakers needed to regain their competitive edge was to acknowledge that the King James Bible is the only inerrant version of the Word of God, and that all other versions are Satan's ways to deceive the masses into swallowing the agenda of the deep state and the New World Order wholesale. With the authorized version on the roster, they're sure to take home a championship this season." He added before beginning a rant about NASA covering up the truth about the flat earth. At publishing time, a broken-hearted Cleveland Cavaliers front office had come out against the King James Version in favor of literally anything else.
Well, there you go.
Yep. Let's stay in California. How about it? Where we find a Christian man preparing his heart to worship. Worship the United States. In a quiet, solemn moment Friday afternoon, local churchgoer Grant O'Neill took a few minutes to prepare his heart to give glory and honor to the United States at his church's exciting Independence Day service. Knowing that he would be attending the upcoming patriotic service, O'Neill spent some time in quiet reflection over the state of his heart, so he'd be spiritually ready to give the USA his all on the Lord's Day. "Lord, as I prepare to attend my church's Independence Day bonanza this Sunday, I just pray that I would decrease and that the United States would increase. As I just learned to love America above all else, with all my heart, with all my soul, and with all my strength." He prayed to himself, "Let all distractions fade away. I know that as I gaze upon the American flags, draped all over the house of worship, the things of the earth will begin to grow strangely dim." O'Neill further prayed that the Lord would help him to be well rested and refreshed on Sunday. So he could really belt out the lyrics to America the Beautiful, the Star-Spangled Banner, and Toby Keith's Courtesy of Red, White, and Blue, along with the choir. Of course, there is no Grant O'Neill in this situation. Or is there? Are there folks in the USA that worship the USA? They worship basketball teams like the Lakers, right? In Ohio, we got our Buckeyes. Over 100,000 worship them on Saturdays.
Oh, not just Saturdays. Some paint their houses.
And God help you if you bowed mouth either, right?
I found that out. Wherever I go with my Michigan cup, somebody says something. "Get that piece of trash out of here." I feel so welcome in Ohio.
We'll talk about that at another time. Maybe when we do contract negotiations for you, Mr. Anderson.
Yeah.
Mr. Anderson's from Michigan, by the way. Or the state up north, I guess. On July 4th, I got the following message regarding celebrating our nation's independence. That amazing day when America was conceived in God-given liberty. It went on to say that on this 242nd anniversary of the miracle of the birth of the United States, as we celebrate Independence Day with fireworks, cookouts, and traditional American culture activities, I also hope you will proudly, and this is the email that I got, that you'll proudly fly the American flag, say the Pledge of Allegiance, remember to honor those who sacrificed everything for our freedom, and pray to our gracious God for the full restoration of our nation. Okay, BJ. What? Well, I said all of the aforementioned and gave you all those stories to make a point. When I proposed my allegiance to the family of the United States of America, when I proposed it last week, many folks didn't understand exactly what it is I was really trying to do. Well, the point I was making is that if you're an American and you worship the Lakers, the Ohio State Buckeyes, or the New York Yankees, and pledge allegiance to the flag, what is it that you have committed yourself to? Folks, families don't unfurl in the air, dunk a basketball, or win championships. They just supply the energy and the personnel to do so. Without the family, and more specifically the natural family and form structure, this nation, as have past great empires, unfortunately discovered it will wither and die.
Got to pay attention to it.
As for my Christian Pharisee listeners, when I think of church, I think of natural families gathered together to worship their God of nature, the God that they acknowledge as their creator and the provider of their subsistence. I'm not disrespecting God. And I'm not disrespecting the flag. The Mayor of Realville, folks, without the family, we got nothing. And we better start appreciating it. You know, Ronald Reagan, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Well, I was just giving it yes, sir.
Ronald Reagan, a Californian, by the way, proudly observed, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Okay, I'm done now. And I hope you get the point. The family is a glue that holds all nations together. If you start messing with it, gay marriage, abortion, Sharia law, pornography, drugs, abuse, take it for granted. Change its structure to where there is no leader in the family. Then you get what the Roman Empire got, the Grecian Empire and other great empires, and where we're headed today, folks. I'm just trying to encourage you to look at the family. It's obvious, but we just don't look at it. We take it for granted. Where do you spend Thanksgiving? Where do you spend Christmas? 4th of July. What makes those holidays special? And yeah, what makes nations special and what made the United States of America special? B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call.
faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
We had something akin to a Chinese fire drill, at least at the New York Stock Exchange. I talked to Mrs. BJ, and she said that you got to wonder what retirees were thinking Friday afternoon. The stock market went down, I think, 900 or 1,000 points. Folks, that's a lot. That's a lot. I think by the end of the day, it actually ended up on the positive side. Again, I wonder how many retirees had heart attacks around 1 o'clock on Friday. For those that survived the strain, evidently it was back up and even in a positive range. So good for them. It's a Chinese fire drill, Mr. Anderson. That's all I can say.
I'm glad I missed that.
Yeah. Hey, again, call the number 614-423-4220, BJ Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson. The definition of nationalism is loyalty and devotion to a nation, especially a sense of national consciousness, exalting one nation above other nations, and placing primary emphasis on promotion of its culture, interest, as opposed to those of other nations. Again, why not pledge allegiance to the family? We've got. Go ahead and play that, Mr. Anderson, because this is something that we heard on the internet the other day, which is, I think, quite good. Quite good.
In this brief history of the Declaration of Independence was gleaned from the U.S. Government Archives, a document called Charters of Freedom. The Continental Congress first met in May of 1775, established the Continental Army and Continental currency in June, and in July they created a post office. In August of 1775, King George III claimed that the King's American subjects were engaged in open and avowed rebellion. In January of 1776, a pamphlet written by Thomas Paine called Common Sense was published and sold thousands. No small feat considering the population was only about 2.5 million. In March of 1776, the Continental Congress passed the Privateering Resolution, which allowed colonists, quote, to fit out armed vessels to cruise on the enemies of these United States, end quote. And American ports were open to commerce with other nations. On May the 10th, 1776, a resolution for the foundation of local governments was passed. A week later, on the 17th, the Virginia Convention passed a resolution that, quote, the delegates appointed to represent this colony in General Congress be instructed to propose to that respectable body to declare the United Colonies free and independent states. The Virginia resolution was presented to the Continental Congress on the 7th of June, 1776, where the measure was tabled for 3 weeks with instructions that a committee of 5 should prepare a declaration to be addressed at the end of the 3 weeks. Thomas Jefferson, one of the 5, was chosen to write the first draft, and he submitted the draft to John Adams and Benjamin Franklin, 2 other members of the 5, for their changes before the entire committee took it up. The Committee of 5 started their group deliberations on the 1st of July and worked all the way through the morning of the 4th, when the Declaration was adopted by the Congress and the church bells in Philadelphia were rung. Here is the document they adopted. In Congress, July 4, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires they should declare, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness.
If you
Prudence,
notice,
indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty, to throw off such government, and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them to alter their former systems of government. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this, let facts be submitted to a candid world. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance unless suspended in their operation till his assent should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has utterly neglected to attend to them. He has refused to pass other laws for the accommodation of large districts of people, unless these people would relinquish the right of representation in the legislature, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants only. He has called together their legislative bodies at places unusual, uncomfortable, and distant from the depository of their public records, for the sole purpose of fatiguing them into compliance with his measures. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly for opposing with manly firmness of his invasions on the rights of the people. He has refused for a long time after such dissolutions to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers, incapable of annihilation, have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to.
how many so far are aware of what you're hearing right now? How many have heard this on a newscast? How many have seen this in a newspaper report? How many have had their children go to a college or a high school and had this message? It's boring. We're talking about people that gave their all for what we have in America today, the freedoms and liberties. And this is just a quick description of some of the issues that they faced and had to do to establish what we have today in America. Go ahead, Mr. Anderson. Let's finish this up.
All the dangers of invasion from without and convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose obstructing the laws of naturalization of foreigners, refusing to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of new appropriations of lands. He has obstructed the administration of justice by refusing his assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. He has made judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount and payment of their salaries. He has erected a multitude of new offices, and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies without the consent of our legislators. He has affected to render the military independent of and superior to the civil power. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation, for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us, for protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders which they should commit on the inhabitants of these states, for cutting off our trade with all parts of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefit of trial by jury, for transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses, for abolishing the free system of English laws in a neighboring province, establishing therein an arbitrary government, and enlarging its boundaries so as to render it at once an example and fit instrument for introducing the same absolute rule into these colonies, for taking away our charters, abolishing our most valuable laws, and altering fundamentally the forms of our government, for suspending our own legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. He has abdicated government here by declaring us out of his protection and waging war against us. He has plundered our seas, ravaged our coasts, burnt our towns, and destroyed the lives of our people. He is at this time transporting large armies of foreign mercenaries to complete the works of death, desolation, and tyranny, already begun with circumstances of cruelty and perfidy, scarcely paralleled in the most barbarous ages, and totally unworthy the head of a civilized nation. He has constrained our fellow citizens taken captive on the high seas to bear arms against their country, to become the executioners of their friends and brethren, or to fall themselves by their hands. He has excited domestic insurrections amongst us, and has endeavored to bring on the inhabitants of our frontiers the merciless Indian savages, whose known rule of warfare is an undistinguished destruction of all ages, sexes, and conditions. In every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. We, therefore, the representatives of the United States of America, in General Congress, assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by the authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish and declare that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. And for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
That, go ahead and unmute me, Mr. Anderson.
You are.
Am I?
Yeah.
Okay. That, in a capsule, I think pretty much sums up an event in our history. I think that is a great, great piece that ought to be shared in our schools, on radio for sure. The gentleman that spoke there is Mr. Larry Richardson. He's going to be our upcoming guest here in a few minutes. Larry spent 2 tours in the Socialist Republic of Vietnam in the 60s and 70s fighting for our freedoms. Now, close to a half a century later, he's back on the battlefield with us, fighting the scourge of communism, of liberalism, separatism. I apologize for the picture today on YouTube. I have no idea why it's blurry. We're trying to work on it. Not sure what's causing it, but again, I apologize for it. That's about all I can do. B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Let's go ahead and take a quick break, Mr. Anderson, and we'll hopefully get a hold of Larry. I can't tell you what's going on. It's blurry here, but Don says it's not blurry on his end. The call-in number is 614-423-4220. Again, the call-in number is 614-423-4220. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Families. Oh. Can you imagine as we came out of our earthly womb in Africa, perhaps, or Ethiopia, wherever it happened? Well, hang on a second. I think somebody tried to call, but on the wrong number. But that was Larry.
So we came out of Africa, huh?
Yeah.
The womb of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And then spread throughout the world.
Yep. But how did we do that? There had to be some kind of a organization, right? Can't have an anarchy. We'd be all over each other. And the lions and tigers and bears, oh my, would have eaten us alive, if you will.
Well, they did.
some
people.
In some cases.
Yeah.
In some cases. I can't. Yeah, without the family, we wouldn't be where we are here today, folks. We just would not be. There's a sense, blood is thicker than water. Yeah, you can have nationalism. You can have kings. And you can have tribe leaders. And you can have mayors and governors. But if you don't have the head of the family, if you don't have the family, that's the power unit. That's what gets us from point A to point B. And that's why we're so big on the family.
That's where you learn survival.
Yep. Now, Larry, when he gets on, I don't know what's going on with Larry. Hopefully he'll get in here pretty soon. There are a lot of issues that attack the natural family. Sharia law is one of them. Abortion. I mentioned some others earlier this morning. But they're all trying to destroy that unit. And you got to scratch your head and wonder why. The answer is really obvious. It's like Occam's razor. Without the family, you're just not going anywhere. Point blank, you're not going anywhere. And we wouldn't have made it to 7.6 billion people had it not been for the family. And no, they weren't all perfect. And yes, there were issues. And there were and are still interruptions. But if you want to destroy a nation, go after the family. In Rome, what Romans did, when you start off with a family, you start off with a structure of man, woman, children. That's the basic structure from a man, from a natural material standpoint. The man represents authority. And if you learn authority in the family, yep. Mr. Anderson, you're being paged. If you learn that authority in the family, then you take it outside and you respect it, right? But if you're in a family and instead of being a vertical relationship, it's a horizontal relationship, how does that transfer into society? Does the term anarchy come to mind? No leader? You're your own God? And that's what and why we're pushing the family so hard. It's so important that we have that. We're in a battle. We're in a war for the soul of this nation. It's being battled through the family. Do we have an issue resolved, or?
No, something's wrong with Skype.
Something's wrong with Skype? Okay.
Larry's trying to call.
Okay, well.
He says Skype is.
We're having all kinds of technical fun this morning, folks.
But I can't find a reason why.
You want to have him call my cell and?
That's what I told him.
Okay.
I'd like to tell him. We'll plug him in through the cell.
Okay, we'll do that. Sorry about the issues, folks. We're we've got a limited crew here. We could use some help. We could definitely use some help. Well, go ahead.
I don't understand why he's getting a busy signal on Skype.
Did you try to call it, Skype?
I did not.
Why don't you try to call it and see what happens?
Call BJ Edwards.
Does I saw a picture of
Well, it's working here.
a crying Honduran girl featured a cover of the July 2nd issue of Time magazine. Or is it?
Huh. So I don't know why he's having trouble.
It said please leave a message, right? Did you answer it? And on the cover was President Donald Trump glaring down at a young 2-year-old girl. Powerful image, right? But fake news.
Okay, well, it looks like he has been calling.
As our president would say, as further research on the subject is now revealing information that she was never separated from her mother at the U.S. border.
Do you have your cell here?
Yeah, this is according to the New York Times.
Sorry, folks.
Why don't you just go ahead and call him? Here, I'll dial it. Bear with us here.
He should be able to call Skype. I'm gonna give that to the lot.
Okay. If we seemed a little disorganized this morning, we are. Anyway, the Washington Post proved that it was not this girl. As a matter of fact, the girl's father, Dennis Hernandez, explained that his daughter, Yanela,
Now on your phone.
and his wife are being held together. Larry, hang in there with us. We'll get you plugged in. Sorry about that. Hang in there with us. We're going to get you plugged in. We're just talking about the Time magazine cover, Donald Trump glaring down at an immigrant, and how horrible we are because we're not letting anyone into this country. Anyone. When, as a matter of fact, we're actually letting everyone into this country and taking care of them as best we can.
You hear us okay, Larry?
Can you hear us, Larry?
Hello, Larry?
Hmm.
I don't. Hello, Larry? I don't know what happened.
Hey, Larry, would you try to call us back on? You want to try to call him back on Skype or try him there?
Are you there now?
Okay.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Hang on. Larry, you with us? He's going to call back on Skype.
Oh. Well, that'll work too.
Yeah. But basically, the little girl that Time magazine had on the cover with Donald Trump glaring down at him was never separated from her mother. With his zero tolerance immigration policy. And they had the caption, "Welcome to Trump's America," right? Trying to make him look bad. Larry, do we have you now?
Yeah, we got it now.
Yeah, I apologize for the confusion. And to the audience.
Not a problem.
This is not really good radio, but you got to do what you got to do.
Everybody has their problems.
Yep.
Even the pros.
Larry, I'm big on the natural family, and you know that. And I think that everything circles around that. And when you started with STAB, what does STAB stand for, brother?
Sound the alarm brigade.
Okay. When you started that, I'm going, man, come on, Larry, you got to get into the natural family movement. You're taking away from it. And then as I watch you work and I see what's happening, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable. It's kind of like we're on a battlefield, and there's a battle that's being engaged. Again, I'm after the natural family aspect of it. But Sharia law is something that chips away at the natural family, as does abortion and pornography, etc. And if you can be successful on your part, Larry, that means that the enemy has to take their resources, let's say from the abortion world or the gay world, and they've got to use them to try to defend themselves against what you're doing, which is a good thing. And the stronger you become, the more forces that they have to use. And in the meantime, you're still promoting the anti-abortion groups, the anti-gay groups, and the natural family groups. And Larry, I've grown to respect what it is that you're doing. I love the way you're set at it. I want to do everything I can to promote what you're doing. That's why I've got you on the program today. So why don't you tell us a little bit about STAB, why you did it. Larry, you were in a war a half a century ago. I figure, aren't you tired of battling all the time?
I sure would like to go fishing with my grandkids.
Yep. But duty calls.
But
right?
the thing, yeah, the duty calls, absolutely, because if my grandkids want to have an opportunity to take their grandkids fishing in a world of even a semblance of the freedom that I knew as a child, then I've got to do something, because that's not going to happen unless we here in the United States, the people on the ground now, those living here right now, unless we find a way to make our so-called leaders, our legislators, unless we find a way to make them confront the issue of what Islam does to Western nations when they invade like they are. What is the outcome of mass invasion of Islam, of Muslims into a Western culture country?
Whoa, Larry. What do you mean invasion? Come on. Invasion?
What do I mean by invasion? Well, go ask anybody that lives in Belgium, England, Germany, France, Spain. Need I go on?
No, we've talked to some of those folks. And what you're trying to do, I guess, is trying to avoid that exercise here in America?
Absolutely. It's already begun. I mean, there are already cases where Muslims have been elected as judges at lower level courts within the state judicial system. And I think there's some been appointed as federal judges back in the Obama era.
Whoa.
And I don't have the resources to research every rumor you hear, everything you hear about it. But I tell you, I have read that there was one judge that let a man who was found guilty by a jury of killing his daughter, but let him off scot-free because he was following his belief of his religious system. In other words, Sharia law.
But Larry, it's not all Muslim. It's not all of Islam's. It's just a few.
Well, that's kind of depending on who's defining Muslims. If Muslims define themselves, you will not find a single one that identifies themselves as a Muslim who does not support Sharia law. That's part of being a Muslim, because the definition of Sharia law itself is Islamic law. So, no, there may not be all of them involved in plotting and saving up weapons and ammunition and stuff like that, although to some degree, I believe almost all of them are. I said almost. There may be some rebels out there that don't believe that's the right road to go. But how many of those rebels have you heard come forward every time we see a story about some neighborhood in Michigan or Minnesota or somewhere where they are harassing American citizens for walking their dogs because it is an affront to them as Muslims in their neighborhood to have somebody walk a dog? How many of you heard speak out against that harassment of American citizens.
You don't hear a lot of it, Larry. You don't hear a lot of it. How do you define? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I haven't heard any person claiming to be a Muslim to speak out against the atrocities that the I'm going to say it, Muslims are trying to force on our way of life here in the country. But let me fall back to the Declaration of Independence that you played just a few minutes ago for just a second. And this is going to play into what you said as you introduced me and came in. The Committee of Five that was tasked for writing the Declaration of Independence, if that committee were operating today, let me tell you what would have happened. The one guy, Thomas Paine or whoever was picked to write it, and then it says that he presented it to Thomas Jefferson and Benjamin Franklin, two members of the Committee of Five, before he presented it to the whole committee. Mm-hmm. Now, here's what would have happened today. Those other two members of the committee that didn't get the sneak peek, that didn't get to look at the document in progress the way that the other two did, they would have said, man, you disrespected me. I'm out of here. Let's forget this document. That's what would have happened today. And what's happening today is the other side, the Muslims, the LGBT alphabet people, the so-called pro-choice people that want to be able to murder children, all of those people are winning because they are uniting together. Even the Muslims and the gay folks are uniting together against Christians.
The odd couple.
And guess what? The Muslims, if they get rid of the Christians, then the first people the Muslims are going to kill, they're going to take all those gay folks and throw them off the rooftop. Because that's what they do with them now in countries over where they are in control.
It's like the commercial says, it's what they do, right?
Yeah, it's who they are.
B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, we're speaking with Larry Richardson, founder of STAB, S-T-A-B. Larry, how do people get in contact with you, and what do you want them to do?
Well, the easiest way is just go to soundthealarmbrigade.com. And that's the website. There are all kinds of easy ways to sign up and start receiving emails and be in contact with us and find other people to be in contact with in your area, hopefully. And what can you do? Very simply, what we have to do to win is, first of all, the purpose of STAB is not to fix the Muslim problem. That is so multifaceted. That is so many possible things that could do to help fix the problem. Amen. You could have a definition added as an amendment to the Constitution that precludes Islam from being counted as a religion. That might help. You could have laws or pass resolutions to enforce the law that was passed in 1952, that any person immigrating into the United States who is calling for the overthrow of the United States government cannot immigrate into the United States. Now, that's any Muslim. That is any Muslim that wants to immigrate into the United States, because part of the Muslim law, part of the Muslim experience, part of the Muslim documentation is that they have to go for overthrowing any other governmental system they find themselves in. That's who they are. So that 1952 law, if properly applied, would keep them out. But we don't have court system. We don't have politicians with enough guts. We don't have bureaucrats with enough sense to read the law and interpret it according to what it says. They all try to think about what it really means and how they feel about it. And then they're going to make rules and regulations that let the law be circumvented. That's the way it stands now. What we've got to do as an American people is we've got to get the politicians that can change these legal attitudes, change these legal perceptions, and the bureaucrats, and they can force the bureaucrats who are supposedly under the control of the politicians as far as lawmaking goes. We've got to get our lawmakers to pay attention to the problem, because I will guarantee you this. Can anyone out there listening right now, can you name one difficult problem that the lawmakers have ever picked up off the table and handled on their own? How about the solvency of Social Security? They handled that one yet? How many years has it been since they've been telling us it's going broke? Yeah, have they handled that one yet? No, we haven't forced them to handle it, so they haven't handled it yet. Can you name one serious issue that's a difficult problem to tackle that they picked up off the table and handled? Excuse my French, hell no, you can't, because they haven't done it. And they're not about to start doing it unless we force them to. So how do we, the people, force them to pick it up off the table and work with it? We have to create a groundswell of public opinion that is their job and they've got to do it. You do that by starting conversations. You do that by talking about this problem in your church. You do this by talking about your problem in your barbershop. You talk about this problem at your kid's softball game. You talk about this problem at your workplace water cooler. You talk about this problem when you're standing in line at the grocery store. You talk about this problem when you go to a city council meeting and you may not have 3 minutes at the podium, but you've got the ear of the people sitting beside you. You talk about this problem at the school board meeting. You may not have 3 minutes at the podium, but you've got the ear of the people sitting beside you. You make this conversation a priority in your life so that you can help provide a life of freedom for your children and grandchildren.
Larry, you mentioned school board meetings, and that's a great point. At school board meetings, you have the school board there, and they don't necessarily and probably won't listen to you, but you generally have several family members or people of interest there. So let's say you've got 15, 20, 30 people. I mean, how easy is it for you to pick up the phone and call 30 or 40 people and say, hey, let's meet together, I got a message for you? They're already there. They're already there formed for you. Your audience isn't necessarily the school board. Your audience is the audience. And when you said politicians don't have guts or sense, I obviously agree with you, but they do have sails. And public opinion is the wind that blows those sails. And what you're trying to do is, number one, make people aware. That's very important. You can teach them. That's good. But they've got to learn to internalize that. It's got to mean something to them. And that's what you're trying to do as well. And then you want to engage them to engage their lawmakers, their decision makers. And this isn't just necessarily for lawmakers, and I know that's your primary goal, but there are other community leaders that can affect what happens. Today's public opinion, Larry, makes tomorrow's laws. And tomorrow's laws, the laws is a teacher. It teaches our children what to do and how to act, or how not to act today. It's just absolutely insane what's going on. Ronald Reagan, I think, said it best. If you can't make them see the light, make them feel the heat. And I think that's what you're trying to do, Larry.
Yeah, and I have a specific, I don't have a step-by-step plan in place, because that has to be fluid. It has to be, able to change in a heartbeat according to circumstances. But I have a overall program in mind, and it's simply this. First of all, I think there's already enough people awake already to get this done. If only 1/2% of the population is awake and aware that the Muslims are changing our way of life, that is their intent, and they're going to keep doing it until they're stopped. If 1/2% of the population understood those three little simple things, we would have enough people, because that'd be about 2 million people. That would be enough people to do what we want to do. The problem is getting those 2 million people identified and then getting them unified, especially when we're talking about conservatives, because let me tell you, trying to get conservatives to agree with each other and walk in the same direction is like trying to herd cats.
We're uncoordinated, aren't we?
And about the only way you can herd a cat is not from behind. You got to put a bowl of food out there in front that they can all smell, and they can all gravitate toward that bowl of food, because they are going to react to something that personally interests them, They're not going to react to somebody standing behind them saying, this is an idea you should support.
What's that website again, Larry? What's that website again?
The website is soundthealarmbrigade.com. So what my plan is simply this. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of groups out there doing good things that have good ideas of things that can change not only the situation about Muslims in this country, but there's people that have good ideas about possible amendments to the Constitution. There's people that have good ideas about reinstate the common law grand juries and all that kind of stuff. I mean, there's a lot of good ideas out there. But I got news for all you folks that are involved with groups with those good ideas. Not a one of them are going to get enacted until the people responsible for enacting those good ideas pick up the problem, pick up the ball, and start dribbling it. That it's not going to happen. Your good idea is going to sit there and die on the vine unless you get the politicians that are responsible for enacting it to act on it. And that's what the purpose of STAB is to get the politicians, force them into the position where they have to pick up an issue and act on it. And I chose the issue of the Islamic invasion of our country because I believe that is one issue that enough people are already awake that we don't have to spend our time going out and educating the rest of everybody, which is a good thing. All you groups that are doing that, keep it up, okay? And I will support you any way I can. But the thing is, there's already enough people awake. We've just got to figure out how to identify them and how to unify them. Now, identifying them, a lot of those people are already identified by those thousands of groups I was telling you about. So my plan, my purpose with STAB is to get a hold of those groups and say, okay, there's a bowl of cat food out in front of us, and it's the best cat food you ever had. You head toward it, and I will help clear the path for your way to that bowl of cat food. In other words, I will help you. I will scratch your back if you just sniff at that cat food, and that cat food has helped me start a conversation everywhere. That cat food has helped us get such a groundswell of popular opinion created right here in our country, in our backyards, in every community, that the politicians cannot ignore us. And so I'm throwing myself open. If you're a member of a group out there and you want your group, you want it advertised and on our website, hey, I'll be glad to do that. We just picked up another group yesterday called Constitution Club. Some of you may have heard about it. Keith Broders is the founder of it. And Constitution Club has agreed to promote Sound the Alarm Brigade or STAB on their website and point their members towards STAB effort. And I've agreed to put the Constitution Club contact information and everything on our website and steer our people toward it. Because let's face it, once the politicians seriously pick up the Muslim issue, then the purpose of STAB has been accomplished. And STAB no longer has a reason standing on its own to exist. But I don't want to do like I did with Rancher Lives Matter and just drop the ball at that point. What I want to do is, as we're going along, as we're developing, as we are using various tools and strategies to create conversations, I want to also steer everybody that comes to STAB back to either the organizations they're already with or point them to other organizations. They might find something that just lights their candle.
Larry,
it just turns them on.
We have to take a hard break. If you could hang on for another few minutes, I've got a couple more questions for you. Can you do that?
Sure.
Okay. B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Great stuff. Great stuff. Imagine that, promoting somebody else's ministry.
614-423-4220.
And the phones are working. 614-423-4220 if you want to talk to Larry. We'll be back in a jiff. With Larry Richardson, Vietnam-era veteran. Spent 2 tours in Vietnam. Now heads up an organization called STAB. We're trying to get the wind blowing in the direction that it needs to be blowing in. And organizations like STAB and sister and brother organizations united are the way to get it done. We just divide among ourselves so easily. And I'm all about the natural family, but I'm in full support of what Larry is doing, and Larry can attest to that. I've been in on some of the planning that they're doing and encouraging Larry to do what he's doing. It's not all about the family. Oh, well, if you're not all about the family, I'm done with you, Larry. But that's not it. We have to learn to work, play together nice, I guess is what I'm going to say. And Larry is trying to do that. He's bringing up a very good point. We need to get interest. We need to get something. We need to get that heart beating somewhere. And he believes the best way to do that is by promoting the issue of the Islamic invasion in America. He's not promoting for it, but he's warning everybody against it. Sorry about that, Larry. Larry has an organization. Larry has an organization called STAB, Sound the Alarm Brigade, soundthealarmbrigade.com. I want to encourage...
And other groups.
Yep.
And other groups.
Yep. I want to encourage you pro-lifers, those that are fighting for heterosexual marriage, those that are fighting in the court system, and there's a ton of you. The government is kidnapping children from natural families and putting them in unnatural families. I want to encourage you to give a click to Larry's organization. Add a number there. And those from Larry's organization, I want to encourage you to do what Larry's telling you to do, and that's to promote and support others. We are all on the same team. Somebody's got to snap the ball. Somebody's got to throw the pass. Somebody's got to hand it off. Somebody's got to run it. Somebody's got to catch that pass. But we all have to be on the same team. And don't worry that Larry doesn't know exactly what to do, because that's a good thing. I have the same issue, and I'm sure other leaders do with their organizations. And the council of many, well, if you don't have the council of many, how can you make the decisions? If it's just you, and please, you personally do not have the ultimate message from God. You don't got it. He puts it in other people. And you have to learn to work with those other people. The chain is only as strong as its weakest link, and shame on you. Shame on you if you don't do something, if you can, to strengthen that weakest link, because it's your lifeline.
I like how Coach kind of illustrated his experience.
Coach recently. Dave Daubenmire?
Coach Dave, yeah. He was talking about while he was in D.C. recently, and there were several decisions coming out of the Supreme Court that day, and there were different groups there for those different issues. And so he talked about the guys in the green T-shirts, and they were all standing there waiting to hear the decision on their issue. And when it came back not in their favor, they were kind of disappointed. But then there was a group over there on another side with purple T-shirts, and they're kind of the same leftist attitude, and they're waiting for a decision. So all the green T-shirts went over and joined the purple T-shirts, and so their groups were now working on that together on that other issue. And wouldn't it be nice if we could see congregations uniting in a common cause, kind of like what Larry's trying to illustrate here? Okay, I'm of this group, but that's not going well over here, so we'll go over with this group, because our enemy is the same enemy, and we need to be teaming up together.
Well, Larry, I asked you to stay over so you could talk some more, and all we're doing is talking. The floor is yours, brother.
That's all right. You're saying good stuff.
The floor is yours, brother.
Those of you out there, please just take the time, soundthealarmbrigade.com, get in the loop, get connected, start finding out where and how you can help force public opinion or forge public opinion to make the politicians do their job. Find out what the other opportunities are out there for you to work on other aspects of fixes for our country. Like I say, there's thousands of groups out there working on that. And there's one of them that's going to be your cup of tea. There's one of them that's going to be what turns you on. And hopefully maybe STAB can help you find that one. It's just a very simple concept that together we stand. Divided,
we fall.
Not we, but our grandchildren fall into the depths of slavery or death.
Larry, I've got this righteous thing. I got bit by the righteous bug over 30 years ago, and it just won't leave me. I've never been the same. I've lost a business. I've lost friends. Well, people that call themselves friends. And but I've made new friends. Some of them are pretty strange. Hi, Mr. Anderson. On our website, we got to get this back up and running. On the Natural Family website, we had a section called Family and Friends, where we listed all the organizations that you can do business with by category. And I don't know whether you have something like that or something like that in mind, but I'd highly recommend it in regards to what you're doing as kind of a focal point, and let other people know who else you do support. But I want to get back to what it is you're doing. Larry, what would you have your efforts result in? Tomorrow, Monday morning, this happens.
Okay, if Monday morning the Speaker of the House and the leader of the head of the Senate, if they got together and said, okay, we are going to look at, dissolve current legislation. We're going to do something, but we're going to figure out how to keep this thing called Sharia law from embedding itself into our judicial system and our way of life in this country, because it's against our Constitution. It's against our core principles. It's against our core morals. It's against everything that the United States used to stand for.
SoundTheAlarmBrigade.com. So you're doing this all by yourself. You're total leadership. You don't need any local leaders or any state leaders. Is that right, Larry?
Oh, man, I am in desperate need of state leaders. And then once we start to grow even more in numbers, we're going to be in need of regional leaders: North Georgia, South Georgia, East Tennessee, West Tennessee, so forth. But we need state leaders, because just keeping track of who all belongs, where they live at, it is a logistical nightmare if we don't have a lot of us sharing the load. Right now, I'm able to do it. I did Rancher Lives Matter with several thousand people and kept track of them. Had a few state leaders that were doing a good job. But even with Rancher Lives Matter, most of the states, no one ever stepped up to say, I will help by donating some of my time to keep this thing organized.
Larry, where would you, right now, where would you target the most crucial area in our country as far as the growth of Islam?
Well, that's a hard one, because you've got your Dearbornistan and all that stuff up there in Michigan and Minnesota and Wisconsin. We all know about those high concentrations. But in other states, here in South Carolina, there are small, low population counties with small communities in them that the Obama administration targeted, and with the help of some mainline ministries out of Columbia, South Carolina, because the government offered them money to do it.
You're talking to church, Larry. You're talking to church?
I'm talking to that thinks it's a church, but it's not. But anyway, they relocated large groups of Muslim immigrants into South Carolina, and they are right on the verge of having a majority of the voters in those small communities as we speak. Texas that's happened to, Oklahoma that's happened to. I'm sure that every state has got its instances. Now, we've got 23 known terrorist training camps in the United States that are immune from prosecution at this time because they are hiding behind the cloak of being a religion, and the government can't mess with their religious beliefs. Now, I hope our law enforcement people are smart enough to go ahead and be gathering the information and stuff on these guys anyway. So in case the situation ever changes, they will have a way to crack down on them. But the fact remains, those training camps are open today, operating today, training and teaching their young children today to perform jihad on their neighbors here in the United States tomorrow. We have got to stop this before it gets worse. It's as simple as that. Failure is not an option.
Mm-hmm.
Failure means I have to pick up a rifle and start fighting again. I don't want to do that. I don't want my grandchildren to be subjected to the destruction and the mayhem that I witnessed in Vietnam. That's not what I aspire for my grandchildren to have to live through. And if we don't be successful with what we're trying to do, that's going to happen. And all of you guys out there that agree with me that it has to be handled, it's got to be done. And unless you come up with a better idea, and if you come up with a better one, I will jump on board your idea in a heartbeat. But unless you come up with a better idea, don't you dare come and tell me you did what you could to combat it if you just sat there and waited to see what happens. I don't want to hear it.
I love it, Larry.
I will be just as much against you as I am that Muslim trying to take my 6-year-old great-granddaughter and claim her in marriage.
2 minutes.
That's what Sharia law lets them do.
2 minutes, Larry.
Sharia law lets them do that at the age of 6.
I got you. 2 minutes. SoundTheAlarmBrigade.com. Larry Richardson. Donald Trump's a little salty, isn't he? Can we depend on him to help us in this effort? In 2 minutes. What do you say about that, Larry?
I wish we could. I actually hope that he can be a catalyst toward making things happen, to make the movement work, that we can force the politicians to handle the situation. But I have seen no direct evidence at this point that this issue is front and center on his plate. That poor man has so much front and center on his plate, and so many people trying to poison the food that's on his plate. By that, I mean they are trying to force their way of thinking, which is the way of thinking that got the country where we're at. And Donald is trying to figure out a new way to look at problems and solve them.
It sure is fun to watch him work. Larry Richardson, SoundTheAlarmBrigade.com. Larry, I appreciate your time today. I more appreciate what you're doing. And yes, I know this is for your grandchildren, but this is about righteousness as well. And you got bit by that bug as well. I can sense that, and good for you. And you got to do what you got to do. When we come back from break, one of our listeners just posted something on the, what is it, IM? You call that?
Instant message.
Instant message, which I want to relay to you all. And I really, our job is to get you engaged. This is Do Radio. We're just not talking about subjects. We want you to get engaged, get involved. That's why you're talking to Larry this morning. And Larry, thank you very much. I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me, Jim. God bless you, and I'll see you Monday, I guess.
All righty.
At least electronically.
Yes. B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Silence in the face of evil is evil itself. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak, and not to act is to act. That's Dietrich Bonhoeffer. We are in that day, folks.
faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
BJ Edwards along with Mr. Anderson, your last call. Please, please pray about getting engaged. Don't pray about praying more. If you're praying, you're asking God to give you a message. Don't insult him by saying you're deaf. Because when you pray again, you're deaf. You should be praying about how you should handle the battle in front of you. And each and every one of you out there has that in front of you. You don't have to pray. You don't have to be a Christian. That battle's there. And you're going to have to do something. And Christians, you need the Joe Sixpacks alongside of you. And Joe Sixpack, you need the Christians as well. Come on. There's an innate intelligence that you have. We know the difference between right and wrong. How is that? We all know it. Explain it how you want. The yin and the yang, God. I don't care. We all know. We all know that. More so than the animals. From our messenger, I'm not going to mention the name of the individual, but the individual states they're doing their part. The IRS, America's first terrorist organization, called him yesterday. And they want to visit with him on Monday. That's a pretty serious visit, folks. His response? Praise the Lord. If I get a jury trial out of this, we might get freedom. Is that a brave soldier or what? Just thinking about getting a call or a letter from the IRS.
The instant robbery squad?
Yeah, is intimidating.
Yes, it is.
He may go to prison, but he'll know that he's done his part. Well, wait a minute, BJ. I'm not going to get involved in this. I may go to prison. You know, it's interesting. You're either going to go to it on your terms, or it's going to come to you on theirs. There is no third choice. It's going to happen one way or the other. You're going to go to it, or it's going to come to you.
There's a lot of uncomfortable feelings about doing the right thing.
Yep. I want to tell you about something that I have done and will continue to do. And I will call this hand-to-hand combat, guerrilla warfare. And in regards to the news media, I started to talk about a story where the Time magazine, you saw Donald Trump's picture glaring down at a 2-year-old, which was basically fake news. But they were trying to make a point. They're trying to destroy a man that is, as far as I can see, standing up for truth in the American way, if you will. Now, Donald Trump's kind of salty, okay? Mrs. BJ and I have conversations about this all the time. She likes to tell me, well, it's the way you say it. How do you say it nice? When some government is going into your government-run schools and they're telling children that they don't know their own sex. Yes, without the parents, of course. Makes it a lot easier that way. Besides, it's for the good of the order, right, Mr. Anderson? 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old children are having their sex changed permanently because of a feel-good government that you're doing absolutely nothing about. The time is now. There's opportunities with the natural family. We need all kinds of help. There's opportunity with Larry Richardson and the Sound the Alarm Brigade. There's opportunity with Coach Dave Daubenmire, Pass the Salt. There's opportunities all across America. There's people that have been out there trying for years, decades, some for half centuries.
Pretty big attempt that seems to be somewhat quiet now was the Tea Party.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that made a big impact. I don't know how that got started and how it got its momentum, but, you know, things like that have happened, and they need to be happening again and uniting.
Well, and it's coming to you. That's why you're feeling more uncomfortable every day. That's why you're feeling like finding a cave or a rock, as Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson goes out on weekends and looks for rocks to crawl under. He's not found one yet. He keeps coming back. And I thank the Lord that he hasn't found a rock in his size.
Yeah.
But you can't. They'll come get you under the rock. It's like water. It's like water. Think about those kids in the cave. It goes, it searches you out, and it'll get to you. And again, I talked about the image of President Trump. And in addition to appearing on the cover of Time, the photo has been reprinted in a number of international newspapers and was used to promote a fundraiser that collected more than $18 million to help reunite families separated at the border. Fake news. Folks, let's be clear here. Maybe I'll bring this into reality for you, especially you baby boomers. Do you remember how you felt when John F. Kennedy was assassinated?
Yes, I do.
Something died, didn't it?
I wasn't even old enough to really appreciate what he was as president. You know,
Yep.
I mean, I was seventh grader.
It lingered in the air, though.
And it had a huge impact.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Still does.
Oh, it still does. Yeah, you still remember. Most people know exactly where they were at the time they heard it.
Especially after the confusion of a curious investigation as it began to unfold. In November of '63, it seems that the curtain had been partially pulled back. And now, thanks to greedy, career liars that we affectionately call politicians, along with ego-driven educators and loose with the facts press, wishing only to forge headlines instead of waiting for the truth. And an entertainment industry void of morals and common sense, America seems to be in the final stage of unwinding. Is it too late? How much time do we have? Many say that God gave us Donald Trump. And it does look like something spiritual is happening there. Again, pick your spirit. But something is happening there. A potential for change. A man standing up for what most of us believe in. No, he's not perfect, and he's not exactly what we want him to do. But he's a lot closer than, say, a Hillary Clinton. And that would answer your question about the Tea Party, Mr. Anderson. If Hillary Clinton had gotten elected president, the Tea Party movement would have grown exponentially. I don't know how successful they would have been, but...
Or they would have been lined up and executed.
Well, that comes next. So, I don't think it's too late, or I wouldn't be here. We remain silent as those who know to do good, but for whatever reason, we don't do it. Maybe we're afraid we're going to offend somebody. Maybe we don't know how. All valid concerns, really. They are valid concerns. Or let's say I call them objective concerns, but they can all be overcome. But the only way they can be overcome is if you do something. What can you do individually? We're going to go to a break, so I don't.
What can you do individually?
Yeah.
Well, we can pray more.
Yeah. Prayer is important.
It is.
It's cover, and it's spiritual help, and you need it. But prayer without works is dead, folks.
One of our team leaders that we talk about sometimes talks about having a silent prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And I checked out what he means by that. And a lot of the silent prayer is giving yourself time to listen. And I think by listening, you might get some instructions.
I meditate inadvertently when I mow my grass. My mind is clear. I'm not focusing on anything. And I get a lot of epiphanies when I mow the grass, which is some reason opens up my mind to some kind of a force that lets me think outside the box. That's all I'll say. So what can you do individually? When we come back from the break, I'm going to go over that with you. And by the way, and with all due respect to my fair tax friends, you know what I mean, fair tax? It's coming back. It's coming alive again. The problem with government financing is not where we get the money, but where the money goes. Amen?
Amen.
Not where we get the money from, but where the money goes. If we stop where the money goes, you're not going to have to worry about where the money comes from. You're not going to have the social engineering that you get with government-run schools. You're not going to have the, boy, if we shut down government spending for climate change, wow, the skies would be clear, wouldn't they? We could actually see that they're clear. Again, we go back. As they are controlling, for the most part, the content and flow of information coming at us all. They're the information barons, as I call them. What am I saying? What am I asking them? I ask them why they're so unbalanced in their reporting. What? Yeah. In hopes that they will ask me what I think that means or what I mean by that. That's their first mistake. That's an opportunity. Then I give them an earful. I recommend that each and every one of you do the same. Look, I'm not an extrovert by nature. I really am not. I'd rather just stay in the house and mind my own P's and Q's, but I see the storm clouds. And 30 plus years ago, I could remain silent no longer. 30 years ago, folks. It's been long. I've lost many more battles than I've won, and I hate losing. I'm like everybody else. I want to be popular. I want to be liked. I want to be the class president. I want to be the go-to guy. I want people to talk about BJ and, oh man, how good he is, and isn't he a wonderful person? Just like the rest of us. But in the process of what I've been doing, I've learned not just a lot about America, but more so about myself. And as a Christian, about my Creator. So please, consider making the call and be prepared when you do so. And God, the yin and the yang, karma, whatever, you will be rewarded for your efforts, win, lose, or draw. How can you now remain silent? You have to see what is going on out there. You have to see it. And please, please, it'll come get you if you don't go meet it on your terms. It will not leave you alone. Whatever it is, it won't leave you alone. Your children, your mother, your brothers and sisters, your close friends, they need you. They need you on that wall. Larry Richardson needs you on that wall. The Natural Family needs you. Coach Dave Dobenmeyer needs you. Linda Harvey needs you. So, what are some of the facts you can arm yourself with? Let me give you what I would consider to be a common sense example. I want to talk to you about the Russian interference with our election in 2016. Everything we're hearing says that the Russians, and indicates that the Russians changed the outcome of the 2016 election. Otherwise, Hillary would be president. That's a familiar swamp expectation. And there's a lot of supposed smoke. I talked to some relationships of mine, and they said, well, with all this smoke, there has to be fire. Unless it's a smoke screen. Huh? Some kind of a crime has to have been committed. Well, on that I'll probably agree, but it wasn't the Russians. The communists are already here. That's what we fear about the Russians, right? Communism. Some kind of a crime has been committed. If you're told this is a fact, and they do try to tell you that, then simply ask for the evidence and then shut up. What? Yep. Show me evidence. Show me a victim. Show me where the Russians actually affected the election. Well, they were on Facebook and they spent almost $1 million. Do you know how much each party spent in getting their candidate elected? I can tell you it was more than $1 million. $1 million might buy you 1,000 votes, maybe. There are many issues out there that are void of facts. Fake news. Have those handy. And yes, you're going to be challenged. And they're going to use reasoning that's going to drive you crazy. But you got to pick yourself up, go right back into the ring. What other choice do you have? I can remember during the 30 years plus that I've been in this battle, that I've done a lot of losing. And I've used a phrase that's kind of like pushing a wet noodle up the hill with your nose. You just can't get anywhere. 5 times, the 2 organizations that I've helped set up, Minutemen United and the Natural Family Foundation, 5 times, I've said, that's it. I ain't doing this no more. It's just not worth it. It's hurting me. It's hurting my family. It's cost me a lot. 5 times. And the 5th time that I did this, my Creator referred me to a verse in the Bible. And it was Luke 9:62. And before you start the battle, especially if you're a Christian, put this on your computer. Print it out and put it on your computer. Luke 9:62. Which basically says, he who puts his hand to the plow and looks back, which I am doing, which man is prone to do, is not fit for the kingdom of heaven. Victory is never ours. It's always God's.
Amen to that.
Never ours, always God's. And we're not doing this to glorify ourselves. We're doing this to glorify the truth, to expose the truth. You never know who you're going to affect or how you're going to affect them. I can remember a story, an instance where a friend of my son's father and I had a conversation, and I showed him a videotape. It happened to be of Dr. Kent Hovind and about creationism. And we had discussions about it. Endless discussions. For 5 years, I talked to him about this. I insisted that he see that video. Insisted. I didn't ask. I didn't reason. I just said, you need to look at that video. And from time to time, he would tell me, well, I saw the video, and we would talk about it. And I knew he had not seen the video, that he was lying to me. But I knew it was important for him to see that video. 5 years passes, and I meet him in a church, and he pulls me aside, and he says, BJ, can we have breakfast tomorrow morning? I said, sure, you're buying, right? I didn't say that, but yes, I said fine. So as I pull in the parking lot, and I see that he's just pulled his car in the parking lot, he comes over, puts his arm around me, and says, I want to thank you. And I said, for what? He said, for saving my life. I said, what are you talking about? He says, you know that tape that you gave me that I kept telling you that I'd seen and we talked about? I go, yeah. He says, you're not going to believe this, but I never did watch that tape. And I'm saying, go on. He says, well, I finally watched the tape. And he got down on his hands and knees. And he asked God for forgiveness. And he became a Christian on that day. Now, God didn't have to show me that. That individual could have gone off of my life, and I've never known what happened. And I praise God for that. But I said all that to say this, until you try. And most of the time, if you're doing the right thing, Satan is going to make you feel uncomfortable. He's going to question you. He's going to discourage you. He's going to try to divide those around you. He's going to lie about you.
Oh, he's good at that.
But you still don't have any choice, do you? You know, every time I try lie or I do something wrong, I'm blessed that God gives me almost instant reinforcement as to, hey, you done something wrong here, fella. Whack. Some people don't get that right away. I think of David Arthur, who lived a transgender, homosexual lifestyle for years. And it wasn't until he was on his deathbed that he finally got it. And I praise God for that. And David does as well. It's there. In David's case, it got him. But he went through hell to get to where he is. Is that what you want to do? Be on your deathbed? Or have your children on their deathbed? And then you finally get it? I hope not. That's what we're trying to avoid here. I don't know. I don't know whether the second coming is going to happen tomorrow, next week, or if it's going to happen at all. Doesn't make any difference to me. With this righteous bug, once you get bit by it, you can't stop. It just won't let you alone. I've digressed a little bit, but I think that's important that we all recognize what it is we're really here for and what we're trying to do. Nothing else really makes sense, folks. This is a trial ground for you.
It's like that scripture, he who tries to save his life loses it.
Mm-hmm.
And if he loses his life, he gains it. We have to think in that context. Because most of the time, if you're not paying attention and you're ignoring, trying to find that rock to crawl under, you're trying to save your life. You're going to lose it because what you were saying earlier, it will find you. It will dig you out from under that rock.
Yep, like water. You cannot get away from it. You can't get away from it. I've got another factoid number 2. Please find out who. Just look up. Do this. Just one thing. Look up the telephone number of your local newspaper, or the address of your local newspaper, or email address of your local newspaper, or TV. Just look that up. Just look it up. Don't do anything else. Just look it up, and well, maybe find out who's responsible for the news, who's writing it, who's broadcasting it. Just do that. And for 1 week, listen to them. Listen to what they're saying. Show me the way.
Discussion, and so much more. Last Call with BJ Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
From your news media. You can do it with your congressman as well, but the news media is controlling that. They're controlling your congressman. They're controlling what the president does. Indirectly, they are controlling it.
And they're twisting what they say.
Yep.
So
Nate, go ahead.
Maybe if you listen to your congressman, or you actually listen, not to the Twitter, but an actual speech that President Trump has given, and then compare it to what the media says, well, I'm giving them too much work.
Yep. What about immigration? Is it good?
Well, I'm grateful for it. Immigration.
How about borders? You grateful for them too?
Yep.
Well, aren't they counterintuitive? Don't they work against each other? If you got borders, how can you immigrate?
Well, I had a discussion with a friend of mine yesterday, and we both shared how his family started in Albania, and mine started in Denmark and Germany, and distant relatives came through, and they spent some time on Ellis Island and went through some health checks and some paperwork and various things, and then eventually our families became natural-born Americans, because our parents were natural-born Americans, because their grandparents were naturalized American people. But we use the wrong word. Immigrant. These people come across the borders aren't immigrants. They're invaders. They're illegal aliens, if that's the best we can come up with. Immigrants, they immigrate. They assimilate to our country. They come here because they want to be a part of something great.
The names of those people that are giving the news to you, list the items that are important to you. Family should be at the head of the list. Maybe a part of that would be Sharia law. A part of that could be abortion. A part of that could be transgenderism, public education. What do they say about those issues that are affecting your family? Put a plus or a negative there. List them. And listen to what they say. I expect to hear back from that individual that's going to be speaking with the IRS this week, and hopefully report back to you on that.
Oh, yeah. And
I hope to hear from some of you in terms of what you've done. BJ, I'm glad you said that. It was scary for me. My knees were shaking. My hand was shaking as I was talking to them. I've never done this before. Whew. Boy, I'm glad I did, though. And I'm ready for more. You don't have to stand in front of an abortion clinic, folks. You don't have to go to a school board meeting. You can do it in the privacy of your home or on your computer, at least for starters. What price are you willing to pay to save America? Coach Dave Daubenmire wrote an article this week, and I'm going to close with this because we're talking about the 4th, and his article related to that. While most Americans are out boating or golfing, visiting parades or parents, lighting sparklers or swallowing beverages, our good friend Dave Daubenmire was found musing this past Wednesday, July 4th, sitting at home feeling especially nostalgic. He'd evidently been triggered into thought while watching one of those corny man-on-the-street interviews so common on social media these days. You know, a man with a camera and a microphone takes to the streets to prove how dumbed down the American populace really is. What do we celebrate the 4th of July, the cameraman with the microphone asked. Although the purpose of the video was humor, it was hard to find anything to laugh at, as one after another of the cell phone zombies searched the public school of botanized minds to find the answer to such a seemingly simple question about American history they didn't know. You know, ignorance is never pretty to watch, and Coach Dave found very little edification in the attitudes of those dumbed-down voters he was watching. I think it was Thomas Jefferson who said something akin to, "He who thinks we can remain ignorant and free wishes for what never was or never will be." How many billions of dollars have Americans spent simply to make people dumber? The National Education Association, the U.S. Department of Education, should be brought up on charges of treason. Seriously. Think about all the money we spend on education, and a college-educated student today can't distinguish between a man and a woman. Dave's thoughts continue as they now flow to Gettysburg and to a recent visit he made there, to that hallowed ground, where on July 1st and 2nd, 1863, the most cataclysmic clash in history of America spilled over the hills of Pennsylvania. On July 3rd, nearly 55,000 casualties fell upon the dust on the Cemetery Ridge during one blood-soaked morning. Americans killing Americans, separating parents from their children, if you will. All gave some, and some gave all. It was those boys he thought of this morning, not the good-for-nothing college-age punks streaming into the streets of America in protest of losing their right to murder their children and in support of a giveaway to foreign invaders. The heritage for which their ancestors had, as Lincoln accurately stated, thus far so nobly advanced. Lincoln, we are witnessing a travesty in this nation this morning. It grieves my heart that the great-great-grandchildren of the men who spilled their blood in Gettysburg would be so willing to give away what cost their ancestors their last full measure of devotion. A slap in their face. You know how old the average Union soldier was? 25 years old. Were you aware that over 3 million such Americans fought each other and that over 700,000 Americans, 1/3 of them, were killed by their fellow Americans? In the 21st century, how could so great of a nation produce such selfish and insolent posterity? You all see the seeds of insurrection bearing fruit as America's recent government indoctrinated school graduates take to the streets with absolutely no knowledge of the sacrifices of those who came before them, force-fed to them by the communistic NEA. And to many of our political leaders, now there's an oxymoron, and doting news media egg on all this with their greed, pride, and ignorance. Here's the take-home. Most Americans just want to be left alone. Got my hand in the air. They're tired of homo policy gangs, of brutal baby killers, masquerading as defenders of children. It is not the Christians that are forcing their belief on others, but the insurrectionists who demand equality for their deviancy and acceptance of debauchery, using jackhammers to chip away at America's monuments all across the fruited plain. The chickens are coming home to roost, folks. The children of disobedience are spilling out into our streets. These demonically powered protesters will not go silently into the night. Every major victory the left has won has been snatched through the courts. Despite what they tell you, none of their diabolical agenda has been approved by the will of the American people. Freedom is not free, as the old saying goes, and we now find ourselves facing a caged animal. The last vestige of power, the Supreme Court, is slipping through their fingers, and they understand what most of us have yet to figure out. The left rules by tyranny. Forced acceptance is their method of evangelism. The courts are their enforcers of lawlessness. So here on Independence Day, I pray you sit with your posterity and explain to them, that's your children and grandchildren, the meaning of independence and all the sacrifices that those who came before them made. Lincoln said of all the sacrifices of these men who gave all and some gave all, it is for us the living rather to be dedicated to the unfinished work which they who fought here thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us. That from these honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave their last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that the nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, and for the people will not perish from the earth, in his Gettysburg Address. It is perilous times to be an American, and America needs a new birth of freedom. Making America great again will not come easy. There are enemies of liberty within the camp, and they will not go down without a fight. Do you have the courage it will require to birth the spirit of liberty? Look deeply into the eyes of your grandchildren, of your neighbors. Do you want to face them in a civil war? Is that what and how you want this to end up? Because that is where it's headed. Look, those liberal leaders are not going to stand before you with a rifle. They're going to send your sons and daughters. And
well,
your
they're
neighbors.
already doing that.
Yep.
Because they had elementary school kids all organized at a protest on immigration. Elementary school kids with signs. They don't even know what the issue is at our state capitol recently.
That's true. Brainwashed. Thomas Jefferson warned us many years ago about what would happen to America if it turned its back on God. I think that Thomas Jefferson had it right many years ago about what would happen to our nation if it turned its back on God when he said the following: "And can the liberties of a nation be thought secure when we have removed their only firm basis, a conviction in the minds of the people that these liberties are a gift of God, that they are not to be violated, but with his wrath. Indeed, I tremble for my country when I reflect that God is just, that his justice cannot sleep forever." What do you think about Thomas Jefferson's warning?
I think he's right on.
The natural family, which we promote, one man, one woman, one blue, one pink, by the way, and a lifelong, committed, monogamous relationship with their biological and or adopted children, is a key concept. And I'm only describing probably 5, maybe 10% of America today when I describe that family. But it's something we need to aspire to. It's something that I say we need to pledge allegiance to the families of the United States of America and to the republic for which they stand. One nation, forged by these families, supported by these families, under, yes, God, preserving liberty and justice for all. I wanted to start this pledge the 4th of July, but you're likely to hear it several more times before the next 4th of July. And I want to encourage you to start a natural family nationalism. And you can do it by supporting Larry Richardson. You can do it by supporting pro-life. You can do it by supporting natural marriage. It's all part of the family. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth and everything in it. Created Adam, and then he created Eve, which means that he created the first family.
That wasn't the one in D.C., right?
No.
In the garden.
The first family. Hey, I appreciate all of you. Tell your friends about us. Catch us on Facebook, BJ Edwards, or The Natural Family Foundation. Friend us there. Go to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to it. The numbers mean something, folks. If you've got an organization with 800 people that you're a member of, those 800 people need to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we, in turn, should promote your ministry. United we stand, divided we will fall. B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, this has been your last call. Thank you for your time this morning. Have a great weekend, and God bless all of you.
Wonderful weather.
Join us Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern for Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.